Hi, Isaac.
Hi, Rabbi. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing great.
How's your eighth day? Is today your eighth day of Hanukkah?
It is the eighth. Wow, you're really up to. I feel like we've trained you now to
Uh-huh.
get the days in.
8 days.
Um,
Well, that's quite something to get gifts for 8 days. I can't even imagine. But
well, I got one gift. My wife got one gift. My kids did get 8 gifts from the dollar store. So the dollar store stock should go up over Hanukkah. Yeah.
that's
Okay.
exciting.
Well, just to get started, I did notice that there's one thing that we just didn't discuss in passing when I was looking at 2:5. And I just want to note that 'cause I think it's important that we take note of this, and then we could get going from 2:7 on. Just in 2:5, it says, "And they said to him in Bethlehem, Judah, blah blah blah." So I feel like the one thing that we just didn't discuss is the fact that the chief priests and or the scribes are the ones who are citing the verse according to the gospel. So,
Correct.
so it's not only that it's a Christian theology, at least from this verse, it's supposed to be a Jewish theology that Jews at the time of in the first century thought of Micah and this verse as the Messiah or the Christ or the King or something coming from Bethlehem. So I think that's very important. I think that's very different than the first prophecy fulfillment in Isaiah, because while I feel that Isaiah would have been an important prophecy fulfillment or is important text, there's no sense in that verse from the Matthew that this is what Jews were really speaking all the time about. Where this, it's very clear that Matthew wants us to know that this is, you know who said this? The chief priests, even though whatever that means, and the Torah scholars. And so in other words, the religious leadership, this is how they interpret this verse.
Yeah. And so the question I have is, so when this was written, right, or when these words were written, when I mean words, when I mean these words, I'm referring to the Gospel of Matthew. There wasn't the kind of delineation between Christianity and Judaism. Or Christianity wasn't formed as, again, as a formal religion, as a different way of life, right? So it's like it's Judaism, but it's kind of a form of Judaism. Most of them, I mean, this as you've mentioned, this book was, I mean, the primary audience, the initial audience were primarily Jewish. The author would have been Jewish, and so I hear what you're saying, where the first prophecy is more could be from a Christian perspective, but this in this case, the second one from Micah, it was put forth by Jewish leaders, by chief priests and scribes. But in today's day and age, in the 21st century, yes, because Christianity and Judaism have taken off in two completely different ways. But back in the day when this was written, 70 years after Jesus passed away, or after his life on this earth,
Well, this one would have been Markian, so this one probably was a little bit earlier. But yeah, like
yeah. So but I mean, in terms of I mean, so Christianity was just taking place, right? So things were being formed. So I'm not quite sure I see what you're saying in terms of that. This was more that the first one is more Christian.
I'm
This
just
is more
noting
Jewish.
there's an ambiguity in the first one, and the second one, that ambiguity is dropped by it saying the priests and the Torah scholars, the rabbis, the religious folk, are the ones who would have interpreted this. That's at least what the Matthew community is saying. And you're right. When we talk about I think the phrase "parting of the ways," the way that Christianity broke from Judaism, it's like a big field of scholarship. And it started somehow in when Jesus was alive. But it took hundreds of years to be
Yep.
formally crystallized
Mhm.
into separate groups. And we know in Ethiopia and different places in Africa and different places in Israel, there probably would have been very much overlap, and people could have seen themselves as both, just like we see in already in modern Jewish history, where we see like Sabbateans. They would have been like, I'm a Sabbatean, but I'm a Jewish Sabbatean, and that's another messianic group that follows Shabtai Tzvi. So a lot of times messianic groups see themselves as subcategories of the main group until the main group either kicks them out or they reject the main group.
Mhm. So if this prophecy is more Jewish, as in if this was put forth by the Jewish leadership, right? See, like the author does not.
That is what's claimed,
Yeah.
right?
So the author does not put forth like how do they react to this. Herod was disturbed, the people were disturbed, but there is no mention of what about the Jewish leadership. Like here they
Well, you
claim
would
here.
think, I mean, I don't want to be an elitist about this, but you would think that this is supposed, the feeling that this is representative of the Jewish people is supposed, that's what that line says. They were literally coming, like, that phrase is so strong.
Which phrase?
Was it 2:5? No, so 2:4. and gathering together all the chief priests, even though there's only one chief priest, and the scribes of the people, namely, that's the leadership. They
Yeah.
got together all the religious leadership, and he inquired of them where the church. So he asked them, and they said, no, wait, like all religious leadership said back to him, that guy is supposed to come from Bethlehem in Judea. What they should have said is like, what are you talking about?
What are you
You're
talking about?
the king.
That's right. That's
You're
right.
the Messiah.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
again, it does seem to me that there's like a theme that's happening underneath the text that we're supposed to feel, that Herod knew that he was illegitimate somehow. And I definitely feel that way when I read this. And it's not said out loud, but you know, as you know, the next verses is going to be the
Yeah.
Pharaoh comparisons.
Mhm.
You know, Pharaoh, yeah, the Pharaoh comparisons.
Mhm.
Let's see, and you know, just like Pharaoh was like an illegitimate leader from a Jewish perspective, you're going to feel that in Matthew. Okay, well, how about let's get reading some verses.
Verses 7 till 10.
2:7 till yeah, whatever. Yeah, we'll probably only get through a couple. 2:7 until you want to stop.
Okay. The Gospel according to St. Matthew, chapter 2, verse 7 onwards. Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him.
Okay, so I mean, we can stop there as too. This is a great plan, right? Right? This is a conniving plan.
But why do you say
We,
conniving? See, but according from what we've read so far, it's not conniving. Right? He called them. He said, "It sounds like a good idea. You go find this thing, come back." But why do you use the
no,
word
but
conniving?
I know the next verses that
Yeah. Okay.
it's conniving. But right now, yeah, 100%. He could be a humble, genuine, amazing monarch, and we'd be okay with that. But it seems less likely that that is taking place right now. So, okay, let's take apart. Sorry, I just lost the place. Let's.
So should we also read the next verse?
Sure, if you
Okay.
want. Yeah.
So after listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that had been sent that had and behold, the star that they had seen when it went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. See, this verse is even more it's even more mysterious. I mean, so it looks as though the star was there, brought them to the king's palace, and then the star disappeared. And
Right.
then all of a sudden again, the star shows up again, and the
Okay.
star starts moving.
Let's slow down. Let's go from let's see where we're at. Okay, so in 2:7, the first thing that we should note, right, is that he privately brought the wise men, privately brought the Magi. So if I'd ask you, based on everything we've read so far, is there a reason for him to privately bring them? What would be your explanation of the need for secrecy?
Because people were disturbed, right? Both him and the entire city was disturbed. People were wondering, and I mean, wouldn't you think that this is like I'm putting forward the theory? Is it possible to construe his actions as being again perceptions matter, and for whatever reason, this Magi show up, and people across the city, across the entire people across the country are disturbed, and there is this notion, this belief that they point to the cities, but he can't. I mean, at this time we don't know, and so he can project his fear onto the people. Though Herod was conniving, was fearful, is it fair to say that he didn't want to project his fear? I mean, people to
So that's
uh,
definitely a good. That's definitely a possible answer. We do have this like triangle of people, right? We have king, we have the people of Jerusalem, and then we have the chieftain, the chief priests and scribes. And definitely the king is troubled, Jerusalem people are troubled, but we never see that the chief priests
describes a trouble.
tribes
Yeah.
are troubled. If anything, they'd say, yeah, this is how the world works. So when he brought, when it says that Herod brought him the Magi privately, does that mean privately from the people of Jerusalem, or does it mean privately from the chief priests? Because it's a different feel. If he's doing it from the people of Jerusalem, it's because they are all troubled. They didn't like this. This is a bad idea, and you know maybe he's going to kill them. Or maybe he's going to get the information out of them as much as he can, while not further troubling the people. But if it's because he's doing secretly because he wants to keep it from the chief priest and the scribes, that's because they have inside information and he wants to overrule that. So it's actually interesting what his intentions are. We can't really know if he's just trying to keep the people calm or he's just trying to get some additional information. Okay, so what did he find out from these Magi? You know, what would you, before we read the end of the verse again, 2:7, what did we expect him to find out from the Magi? What
like
would you have asked them, Isaac?
like this whole
What
what
are
do
you
you
guys doing here?
what do you guys
How?
yeah, I
What?
mean
Where?
so before we answer something, you have to take them seriously, right? And now I find this hard, like again, the fact that this is astrology, they can be
No,
wise men, they can be
Herod's taking it
whatever.
seriously. Everyone's taking it seriously. The people of Jerusalem are troubled. The
So
chief priests and
maybe
scribes say this can happen.
let me put it
Everyone's
this
taking
way.
it seriously.
Let me put it this way. So, is the author using the word serious in a different way? Serious, and people were troubled, were worried. Not so much that they believed every word they said. Again, I'm just, so
I mean, in the
when you
Greek,
and I use the word serious, we mean like giving this a complete
I
attention.
mean, listen, trouble. It says troubled in this Greek translation. It says disturbed, bothered. It means that they had a sense of security, and their
Mhm.
sense of security was lessened by this news. Like any form of trouble, it's something that was annoying, and it could be. Listen, when you have an impending issue coming upon your life, you have a choice. On the one hand, you can say, "I'm going to get hit by a car. I can't do anything. I'm a deer in headlights." On the other hand, you can see what Herod starts doing in 2:7. You start conniving. I'm going to get out of
Yeah.
the path of the car. I'm going to make sure I don't get hit. I'm going to make sure that I can stay in power.
So
So,
here's my question to you, right? So has the author embellished some facts to highlight themes? Because even if Herod calls people secretly, how does the author know about this? This would have been
so
documented, right?
this is
You
something
know,
I told you. We talked about in the past that in the Talmud, the Book of Esther, one of the proofs that the rabbis bring that the Book of Esther is meant to be a prophetic, or at least written with the Holy Spirit book, is the fact that she knows what's happening in people's heads. So I look at that's definitely, you could say that's here. 100% the author claims divine perspective knowledge. How does he know Herod privately did this? Was it
yeah.
written down after fact? I think you have to look at this as it's viewed as a prophetic book that has the God perspective, and you can't ask questions on that. We
So
don't
the
know
way,
what this information came from, but we're
yeah.
happy.
So is it possible that the author wanted to show that man's purposes do not thwart the works of God, or if God does something, well,
Oh,
and so
that sounds great, 100%.
and so in a way to prove that, or in a way to show that, to highlight that, he sets this up where Herod freaks out, causes people, does all secretly when we don't even know.
Isaac,
I mean,
I think 100%. If you told me what is the theme of chapter 2 of the Gospel according to Matthew, I would say, and you just said, "Hi, I'm Isaac. I got the theme. The theme is that you can't thwart God's plans." Ha ha, Herod. Yeah, I would say, yeah, Isaac. That sounds smart. I got no problem with that.
okay,
But
so
I
but
think we have to take the text seriously. Like, we could look. We're definitely looking at it as literature as well
yeah.
as a constructed text, especially if we want to do gospel parallels and synoptic parallels. But we also have to view it as a book. Like, why would the divine perspective be written this way, and like without questioning, like from a literary criticism perspective, the always like we want to question the intention of the author and also what the author wanted to get out of the text.
Okay. And so, yeah, and so your question is, so what did
So the
Herod
second
ask?
half, if I asked Isaac, they call the Magi privately. They all show up. They weren't scared of you. They're happy to come, even though they seem to be announcing your impending death and doom. They were not scared. They come to Jerusalem, and what does he ask them?
Where was this born?
What time the
What
star
time?
appeared?
What time? Yeah.
So tell me what that question is really asking. What is that question asking?
What time the star appeared? Huh.
Well, we know. So we said earlier, they saw the star appear at this time, and that means the King of the Jews is coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what he was really saying is like, are you guys sure? Are you guys sure? Like, because that star appeared over there, that would mean my monarchy is coming to an end, and the King of the Jews, the Christ, is upon us. But if the star appeared over there and your astrology reading was a little more poor, because I don't know you guys so well, I have interpretations of astrology as well that would tell me that you interpret it wrong. So they tell him exactly what it appeared, and it
So
seems his understanding of astrology comes to the same conclusion.
So it's not as in which place, right? It's more about what time. So what I'm not clear is, like, he didn't ask them in which place the star appeared, because they both live in two different places. They both live in two different countries, and like by knowing what
Right, but
time
this
the
was
star appeared,
what
right? How does this?
we know from 2-9 though, which we're not gonna get to today. But we know from 2-9 this is like a magic star. This is not just like the North Star was in the north, or
So
that Mars and Jupiter are in the sky this time of year. It looks like this is a magic star,
okay,
and
so
the
just
magic star pretends this.
yeah, indulge me on this. Did a star really appear, or did the
Oh,
author just make these things up to him?
listen to
So
you.
the author had these facts to embellish this and put.
Isaac, I need you to be a better Christian right now and say
No, I am a good.
the star appeared, and that's just fine.
Okay, I'll be a good Christian, as you say, Rabbi, and say that the star appeared. Because this whole thing is just full of so many whole. I mean, it raises many questions, right? Like the star shows up, it goes away, and then it shows up all over again. I mean, and then he doesn't ask them.
Maybe. Yeah, go
He
on, go on.
doesn't ask them about to tell me about the kind of star, like was this really a star? It's about what time. It's as though he assumes that it's as though he's already accepted parts of what they said, right?
Well, don't
So
forget, in 2:2, they say a bunch of stuff, and in 2:3, it says Herod heard it already. So he knows the information.
yeah.
He's not here to question that they saw a star in the east. He's not here to question if that star in the east, then that means it's time to worship the new king of the Jews. He's here to question that if you saw that star in the east, if it actually was at a different time, my knowledge of astrology would come to the conclusion that you're misinterpreting this this
Yeah, I see.
star.
So I think what you're getting towards is that Herod had an understanding. Herod had an understanding of astrology. Like he knew, probably was not as
At the
well
very
versed.
least, he discussed this with someone in advance, and he found out like this is what it would mean, this is what it wouldn't mean, this is what time. So he probably found all the holes, and you know, when, it's like a verdict where you get a cancer. You go to a doctor. The doctor says you have cancer. So but I didn't smoke. Oh, but I'm very healthy. Oh, I don't have cancer in my family. Can I get a second opinion? It looks like Herod's trying to get a second opinion about his demise. Which is smart, right? Maybe they're bad astrologers, those Zoroastrian Magi. We don't know anything about them. Maybe they're just bad at their job, and I know my astrologers say differently. And by the way, that's literally how astrology works, like in general, even today, right? Oh, you are Cancer. Oh, you're Gemini.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm on the verge of this day.
It's flaky, right?
I don't
The whole thing is flaky. I mean, it's just, I mean,
flaky. I hear. Okay,
for folks who believe this, fine, but
let's do one more verse,
yeah.
or at least start it.
So he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word that I too may come and worship him.
Weird, right? Wow. So we know this is nefarious. We know he has no intention of worship, but he literally falls into their narrative, right?
So we
Their
don't know,
narrative.
right? So okay, so here's the thing. At this point, we don't know because each person has a choice. Maybe he could have worshipped him. He could have, right? I mean, see,
I would argue our
we're
knowledge of history and everything, it means he could not have worshipped him. I would think that this was always meant to be deceptive.
excuse me.
I think that's what when he calls them privately, secretly, that's the whole point. The only reason you need a furtive plan is because it's so secretive.
I'm trying to push back against this notion of being predestined or deterministic that he already
Herod the
decided.
Great, Herod the Great, Herod the Evil. he was conniving.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all,
But he was not. That's not part of his identity. That's because of the actions he did. So he had a real choice. He could have chosen. He could have chosen not to be conniving, because again,
yeah.
as you mentioned, that this guy he's been king for 30 to 40 years, almost 40 years now, and he knew people will die. So I mean, by this point, he knew that again, nobody lives forever. And
Okay,
so
well,
at
let
some
me
point,
ask you a question.
yeah.
So he's conniving, he's not conniving, but let me ask you, why does he send them and not send, for example, the army with them? Why does he not send himself with them? If Jesus is really to be worshipped, as we see at the end of 2:8, shouldn't so Herod go along? Just so you know, Jerusalem and Bethlehem are not far apart. He
Mhm,
could have gotten there in one day. It
mhm.
wasn't like go from Jerusalem to New York City. It was a very small trek. So why do you think he sends them? Go and search out exactly where's Jesus? Where is he at?
So, I mean, maybe at this point he was genuine to say that I want to. I mean, he had maybe he again to say that go find him, come back, so I'll come worship him. If you were to send the army, right, that would give the notion of maybe he's trying to kill somebody. At this point, we don't even know if this child is there.
So I
They've
completely agree with you. So I'm not going to accept your dual read. I'm going to say he's conniving from the start. That's how I read the word 2:7 privately. So I'm going to say if he sent the army, like you're saying, he needed the Magi to find the boy. If he just go, how many people are born in Bethlehem every day? Let's say there's 3 boys, 3 days, who knows how many kids are born. So he wouldn't have had the ability to find this kid. He needed the Magi to seek out the kid so he could execute him.
so okay. So if only 3 people were born in a day, right?
But no,
Why
no,
can't
whatever, whatever.
Okay, fine. If 10 people are born a day, fine, right? It's not that because everybody was taxed, right? People were taxed. They knew who they were. So what do you mean if we send the army that they can't find him? Wouldn't the, I
No, no,
mean,
I'm just saying, like, how hard is it? We know from the Moses story, and we know from all these other historical stories, babies get hidden easily, right? We lose
that's right.
babies, we hide babies. So it could be
That could be
could be
because
being a
people,
wise king. He's like, I know that these magi somehow have the magic and the astrology to figure out who this boy is. We heard about it. I accept their interpretation. And now, if they find him, they are literally pulling off the first step of the execution.
see, but then if that is true, if this guy was really that smart enough, he would probably send somebody from his house, again, somebody from his kingdom to go along to travel along with this magi. So again, he could have deputed, okay, the Magi will go, no army, but somebody from his, from his kingdom or from his office. One of them can go with one of them can go with the Magi as his insurance, but he didn't do
Well,
that
listen,
either.
again, like without reading ahead, we know in 2:12 there's a divine intervention to make sure that they're safe and Jesus is safe. So all we could say is that God probably would have made sure that there's no additional plans.
So this is what I'm trying to get, where that we all have a choice to make. And Herod here, at this point, there is no, again, he doesn't come across as wanting to kill this baby.
Okay, but read 2:12 and
Okay,
be
so
warned
okay,
of
so
God.
people have a change of heart. My point is, he chose at some point that I'm going to kill this baby, which he didn't have to. He could have worshipped him, as he told him. He could. They could have come back. He could have something changed in his heart. Something changed where he made a decision to do things a certain way, and at that point, God intervened. Like again, this is
Well,
this
I
is
feel
us
like
reading.
I find that read hard. Just not. I don't want to keep reading ahead, but even when you see 2:16, and you're gonna notice that he gets angry, he
Wow,
starts.
this is great. Now you're moving forward, so this is
No,
really
no, no.
good. Yeah.
I'm not allowed. We're gonna read the. I'm just pointing out. I think that these verses are defeaters for your point that he could ever be viewed as a positive figure. I think Herod is like the Pharisees from a New Testament perspective. They're generally just viewed as negative figures, and nothing good comes from them. And I don't think you could have another read from their perspective.
Wow,
Herod
that's
equals
that's a
evil.
very strong term to say that nothing good comes from the Pharisees. I think the reason why it's put them in that
I
way,
consider I consider myself a Pharisee. I
yeah,
consider
that's right.
I take umbrage against such a statement, but I do think that Pharisees are viewed as nefarious, evil, stupid, undermining,
No, they're
backwards
not.
folks.
No, they see. Okay, no, they are. I think so. I think the gospel is trying to highlight the aspect that people make choices to do things a certain way, and it's not that Pharisees were evil. It's not that they were intrinsically
Okay,
evil or
again,
bad.
I'm just not sure what like. Yes, the people have a choice,
That's right. So
but
all I'm saying,
Herod's a bad guy. His choices be bad.
see, okay, so all I'm saying is at this verse right now, been in 2:7, 2:8, or 2:9, even if he had, again, maybe again, we all have the capacity to do good and to do evil. It does not say that he wanted to kill him. I mean, so let's give him the benefit of the doubt to say maybe Herod didn't that he wanted to worship this child, but probably something changed after that in his mind to say that he made a choice to go against to do something which is
Well,
which is
listen,
evil.
I don't know, but just going back to the verse, the only thing that I think we do have to take note of additionally is that he actually sends the Magi with the intention of coming back to him to
Yeah.
fetch him to go back to Bethlehem.
Hmm.
It says, and when you have found him, bring me word. And in another translation, it says, bring word back to me.
Hmm.
Namely, he expects the Magi and, or the word, namely a messenger, to come back and tell them they found the kid.
And that's my biggest thing. Like, if this guy was really that evil, right? I mean, yes, he was paranoid, but if he wanted to kill the child, he would have sent a messenger. He would have embedded a messenger in their group.
I'm just saying he might have, but
Yeah,
like for all the thing, it could be he was hoping that they wouldn't find the child, and they just misinterpreted the astrological star, and it was all mistaken. It could be this was his prayer and hope.
could be. Yeah. So after listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, a star that they had seen when it arose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. So, not knowing the distance between Jerusalem and Bethlehem, I can really say, "Wow, this is something like a star really showed up, right?" But once we take into account the distance between Bethlehem and Jerusalem, this raises multiple questions. What do you mean the star showed up, and what? So I'm intrigued. How do you understand this? What is this verse? What does 2:9 mean to you?
I take it seriously.
Wow, it
Well,
looks like
I told you,
you're the
like you can't question. You
you're the
know,
Christian now.
we're in a world of prophets
Yeah.
and stars and magic and messiahs. I enter my world and I don't ask questions. Listen, Jerusalem to Bethlehem in that day probably would have been, I don't know, like it's something like 6 miles. So let's imagine it takes 20 minutes to 21, 22 minutes to walk a mile. So this was, what is that? 120, 6 times 20, 120. So this was like a 2 hour walk.
3 hour, let's say, give and take three
Uh,
hour walk.
so,
Yeah,
so from Herod's perspective, he expected to come back the same day.
that's right.
It wasn't a big deal. Maybe they would have taken a nap. They found him. I guess he didn't know that they were full of treasures at the time. But it just doesn't seem wild that Herod thought that if they find the kid, I could get rid of him quickly. No big deal. And this is what Herod did. I don't have the list in front of me of all the people in Herod's family that he killed, but it's extensive. Um, Herod murdered Miriam, her two sons, her brother, her grandfather, her
He was
mother.
he was
Uh,
paranoid.
yeah. Herod had 8 other wives and had 6 children.
Hmm.
Anyways, he was a killer.
So okay, so this seems like an oxymoron. The chief priests and the scribes, they appointed the Pharisee, and then they go away like this is their king, right? At least the way this is the king of the Jews, and they say if this person is born, here's where they should be born,
Well,
and
I
they
will note
point.
it doesn't say Pharisees here, and
I mean, sorry, chief priests and
there is
scribes.
some there's this people called Sadducees or Sadducees, and the people who live in Jerusalem probably would have had some Sadducean belief. And Sadducees, at least in rabbinic literature, are the opposite of Pharisees. Even though in Christian literature, Christians are the opposite of the Pharisees. So there's a lot of
Okay, so
bilateral.
okay, the chief priests and the scribes, right? Who are they? Chief priests
So
is it a Pharisee?
it would have been the priests of the temple, that
Yeah.
was the chief priests, and the rabbis of Judaism, whatever that means. That's what
Okay. So where are these people? They give them a verse, they tell them here's where you should go, and then they're completely out of the picture. Like as
well,
though
we'll see. We'll see how they come up. It's not like they don't come up again. They'll come up. We see priests and temple and lots of these things come up again. Okay, Isaac. Wow, this was a fun day.
well, I feel like as we keep talking, I become more Jewish and you become more
uh,
Christian because I keep asking you all these questions about is this really happening? You say, this, and you say, no, this really happened. You should take this at this word.
Again, like I feel like when if you were to read the Quran,
Yeah.
and you would say, no, no, Muhammad is not a prophet. What can I? So you could read that from a secular perspective, but you're not going to really understand what the text is trying to say to you. And if you read, I can go text by text, but holy texts are meant to be taken seriously. And taken seriously means both academically
Yeah.
analyze it, but it also means put your feet into the Christians, the Jews, and
Yeah.
what they're trying to
So
accomplish.
I'm not denying the text. I believe in the text word for word. All I'm saying is, what is the author? Again,
What are
I'm
the
just
odds?
no,
What
no,
are
no,
the
no, no,
odds
no,
of the Messiah? What are
not
the
the odds.
odds of
So my question here, here's my question: is the author again? Has the author embellished some facts to to put forth a bigger claim, and the biggest statement being that God.
Christian act? Listen, one fun thing I used to do. It's a fun thing if you want to have some fair time. Take
Fair time? What do you mean free time? What do you mean by
I'm
that?
saying if you take the synoptic parallels and you line
Yeah,
them up, there's a book that does that, and you can see sometimes it say like a small change.
yeah.
So is that small change a lie, an editorial mistake, or a fix, or better arguments? So we're not here to know why those things are here. The text is as we hear it. We know that the synoptics are different. We know that they have overlapping messages. We know that Matthew seems to cut and paste from Mark in multiple places. We know Luke is of completely different nature, or John. So we have to just take that at face value when we analyze. One of the famous questions we have in Judaism, which is a parallel to the Synoptics, is we have the Ten Commandments twice in the Torah, in
Hmm.
Pentateuch. One's in Exodus and one's in Deuteronomy, and they're not identical. So if you want to believe he gave one set of tablets, even though I know we gave a second one, let's say the tablets were supposed to say the same thing. What do you do with this contradiction? That one time it says this, and there's answers. Sometimes it says, well, this is the first tablets, the second tablets. Or maybe they were both said in one saying, and this is how it got written out. Or maybe this is so it's not our place to say Exodus and Deuteronomy, contradiction, there's no way to answer it. And there's thousands of things like that we can find out through any Bible, through the Quran, through the Bhagavad Gita, through whatever you want. You'll find things that you'll deal as contradictory, and it's your job to not say, "Oh, that star couldn't come." I don't know.
I'm not saying the star didn't come. Something came. All I'm saying is, was the author
The
trying to
star
put?
came, Isaac.
Yeah, the star came. Was the author using all these to put forth a bigger claim? The claim
Here,
being,
well, I'll let you finish with one question for you to ponder on stars. So we see they saw a star, and that's what made them come to Jerusalem. But then another star comes. Is this the same star? Good
we don't
question.
know.
You
We
have, you have
don't
to,
know.
you have to ponder it. Okay.
Okay.
Isaac, to be continued.
To be continued. Well, enjoy your eighth night of Hanukkah, and say hi to your family.
Okay.
And
Thanks so much.
talk to you tomorrow. Thanks, Rabbi.
Bye.